I raised a few questions with you yesterday around Audit Wales's report on ensuring value for money from rural development grants made without competition. Now, clearly, farmers and others accessing RDP funds have been subject, of course, and rightly so, to intense levels of scrutiny and checks. But it is, I think, ironic that the body that's been penalising farmers for some minor discrepancies, such as incorrect Glastir crop codes, which are just 3 letters, have now themselves been found to have poor record keeping. And on projects, of course, running into tens of millions of pounds just on those that that Audit Wales and the Auditor General looked at. This episode will have damaged people's confidence, in the wider public and amongst stakeholders. So I'm just wondering what you're planning to do to try and restore some of that lost confidence.
And yes, I mean we will have to make very clear the transparency that we apply on the same processes, and be clear on that going forward as we move into new systems.
Is there any risk at all of disallowance stemming from this? Is that something that you're sort of mindful of or weary of?
So I'm going to hand over to Tim to answer that question.
Yes, there is, and we are in discussions now with the very late stage of those sort of discussions with the European Commission around the potential level of some of the penalties, and indeed some have already been applied in previous years.
Of course, some of that money stems from the increased pillar transfer that was introduced by a previous minister, and assurances were given that at least 80% of that money would come back to farmers. So, it might be difficult for you to tell us how much of that 80 million that is in the process of being shifted actually goes back to the sort of agricultural front line, if you like. But is it likely that the government is going to be true to its word in where that money ends up? And if not, why not?
We have to look across the full breadth of the programme for that sort of 80%. And of course, a large part of the programme goes through the Glastir programme. So it's not in a sense around some of those expressions of interest for projects. That 80 million includes a substantial chunk going in farm business grant in Glastir woodland. So that lots of that is targeted on farmers. And I mean, we have to look at the overall breadth of the full RDP programme for that 80%. We can look at the numbers overall and try and give you a better assessment, but it's a very, very large chunk goes to farmers.
To find that, to us as a committee would be useful, because I think it would allay some concerns that the government isn't fulfilling its promise, and of course it would allow you then, with the remaining 53 million that hasn't been allocated, to maybe use that in a way that helps you to meet the expectation certainly that has been created amongst the agricultural community, that money that was taken away and promised that it would come back to them is something that actually happens.